Welcome on Texas football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. Gerry, welcome in. We're going to talk a little receivers today. What we wanted to say about this, and one of the reasons why we chose this position, because of Saturday's scrimmage. We heard a number of different names come out of Saturday's scrimmage, a number of different permutations that Steve Sarkisian is utilizing, not only at receiver, Gerry, wide receiver. So when we say receiver right now, we're not just talking about wide receiver. We're also talking about tight ends. A number of different permutations they're trying to use and how they're trying to use specific people. One of the things that Steve Sarkisian said at his press conference on Thursday is that he was going to try to lean into the specific strengths of what each player did and try to accentuate those. I do believe, based on what we're hearing and everything from behind the scenes, there has been an emergence of a top six wide receiver, clearly. Those are Isaiah Bond, Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore. They've been running with the first team out of the gate, not necessarily the whole practice, but out of the gate, followed by Ryan Wingo, Silas Bolden, and Matthew Golden in the second group that then merges in sometimes with the first, and they kind of interplay off one another. All right, what is your first and foremost here? How do you see this room developing thus far based on what we've been told and seen in front of this in front of the scenes, in front of the camera, as well as behind the scenes? What are you hearing, and how would you separate these groups of receivers in some way or fashion?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things for me, and that is the guys are going to be in the right place at the right time. Route recognition. That is huge because without that, you're going to limit yourself on some level. You're going to limit yourself with Quinn, and you're going to limit yourself with Sark. So route recognition, I think, is one thing. Who's ahead there right now? Going into the season, DeAndre Moore and Jonte Cook should be ahead because they were a year into the program, a year into the offensive system, and a year where that was really a learning year for them in that system. Then you had the three portal transfer guys, and Silas Bolden was not in for the spring. Then you have Ryan Wingo, the freshman, who was in for the spring, who still has a limited playbook he's working with. So route recognition is one. That, I think, it endears you to Quinn and Sark. Two is then the playmakers. Who are the guys that are going to make the big plays? I think that's different right now than the route recognition guys on this team at this position.
So let's categorize them then. Okay.
Yeah.
One category in this, I understand what you're saying. You're really talking about most dependable.
Yep.
And then big plays. And they don't have to necessarily be this. They can cross groups.
Yes.
But they don't necessarily cross groups at this time. And that most dependable group, you and I talked about this before, we see it as DeAndre Moore. He is
number one.
He's made no bones about it. He's trying to be Jordan Whittington 2.0.
Yeah.
And there is a space for Jordan Whittington on this football team in the starting lineup.
Yes.
Not just as a member of the unit, but in the starting lineup and playing a lot. So DeAndre Moore. Then you have Jonte Cook, who, to your point, knows the routes, knows what he's doing, has not been 100% sure with his hands this season, but is dependable from knowing where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be, his practice effort, all of that stuff. And then you added a third, and I'm speaking for you, Matthew Golden. You felt has been, and we talked about this even prior, developing a rapport with Quinn. So the most dependable right now, in your eyes, are Moore, Cook, and Golden. Two of the three are starters. Isaiah Bond, not in that group right now of dependability. What do you make of that group as the dependable route recognition? However you want to categorize that.
I think DeAndre Moore is a clear-cut one there right now. From what I was told after Saturday, I was told this on Sunday, is that Quinn, if there's one guy, if you said name one guy that's always going to be in the place you expect him to be, that would be DeAndre Moore. So that's a very good sign for DeAndre Moore because if Quinn trusts him, Sark trusts him. And so that's a very good place to be. And like you said, Jordan Whittington, invaluable for the Texas team last year in very much the same ways. And now he added some things in the run game, blocking, and just the off schedule, just hustle play against TCU, right? But from a recognition standpoint, Quinn never had to worry about if Jordan Whittington was going to be where he was supposed to be. So I think DeAndre Moore is a clear-cut one there. I think Matthew Golden and Jonte Cook is fine in that regard as well. Really solid. Both those guys. Moore's the smoothest route runner. Jonte may be the best route runner, obviously working with Margin Hooks for years, then coming in working with Chris Jackson. It's a pretty good combo to work with from your offseason and to when you're at Texas. Matthew Golden, I think it built up a really good rapport with Quinn. Now, is he all the way where DeAndre Moore is in terms of understanding the offense and the route recognition? I don't think he is yet, but I think he's making strides there. So those three are how I'd rank him. I'd rank him Moore, Cook, and then Golden right now, with Golden the newest in the scheme and continuing to kind of learn and adapt to the scheme change from Houston to Texas.
I think that everybody would agree with you. Now, big plays, or the playmakers of the group, almost are the exact opposites.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is why I think Steve Sarkisian is having, he's trying to find and mix and match. The big play guys that we talked about, Isaiah Bond, we already mentioned, Silas Bolden, and Ryan Wingo.
Yep.
And noticeably, all three of those guys are new to the program this year. They're all two transfers and a high school freshman, a true freshman. But those are the ones that strike a little fear in the defense, right? As opposed to just being more guys in line, whether it's because of the speed of Bolden, the ability to get open of a Silas Bolden, or just the long speed and length of a Ryan Wingo. Those guys are 100%. They're very different than the other three guys. So how do you mix and match this group together? And what do you think about these guys? Can Bolden become a dependable guy? He's got to change. I mean, my point being there is we've heard some things behind the scenes that he's looked great, and then maybe he misses a route or two. Now, everybody misses a route or two.
Right.
Well, we don't know exactly where he's at on that scale. Steve Sarkisian would have to tell us. But he's more of a big play guy making scintillating catches. Bond has been the same. We saw that in the spring game. And Wingo, it's understandable because, look, he's even Sark said he's only an outside receiver at this point. Where do you think that takes us?
Yeah, so I think I've heard that Silas Bolden is really comfortable in the slot in the scheme right now. Now that pushes against what is DeAndre Moore, right? Yep. So how do you play? I think Sark is thing he's figuring out is how you play all these guys in what type of rotation. Is there a three that plays best with the three? They mesh together on the field. I don't think right now you would see a scenario where it's Wingo, Bond, and Bolden early in the season being the dependable three that you put out there. So I think he's going to have to mix and match. But look, I think what's interesting is Ryan Wingo's gained the most acclaim, attention in spring through fall camp, right? He has zero memory recall from college football. Isaiah Bond has some really strong memory recall. And so I think that's an interesting place to be for Bond, is that he's made huge plays for Alabama and in huge games, which saved the season. And so he's got some memory recall. He's got big play ability that he's shown in the SEC already. And I don't think we can underestimate that, because I don't think Sark and the staff is underestimating that. Silas Bolden has really good memory recall of, I've had success against bigger, longer players that I'm not supposed to have success against. And he made a catch parallel to the ground on an out route Saturday that was the catch of the day. That may be the catch of this whole camp. We'll see if somebody gets better than that. So I think that's what's interesting, is there's a little more memory recall with the two older guys. With Ryan Wingo, it's kind of like aggressive naivete in a way that, hey man, I haven't dropped the pass in the fourth quarter with a game on the line at the college level. I'm just out here doing my thing and I'm making plays. But he also, it doesn't have the memory recall of the great catch in the back of the end zone to win the Auburn game when Alabama should have lost the game, right? I mean, so there's that. So it's different from experience standpoint. But I would say this: Wingo is your true X outside receiver. Now he's only got 33% of the playbook from what I hear on him right now, because as he's continuing to learn Sark's scheme, which is difficult, and I think
33% means the outside receiver solo.
That's right. And so Sark wants to put him in position to go be the tremendous playmaker he is with a limited playbook early in the season. I think with Bolden, the playbook's limited right now because he wasn't in for the spring. So where's Sark going to play him? Is it going to be in the slot? Is it going to be in the outside? He wants him to play all of it. Then with Isaiah Bond more on the outside, thing with Bond is if we line guys up and ran the 40 and the 100, he's probably your fastest receiver. And so he has got his ability within a game to me. He can create playmaking as well because he's going to be feared running down the football field. He has it on tape at Alabama. He has the big plays he's made. And he is a weapon in Sark's offense, whether he's catching the football or he's just running a safety away from where Sark wants to clear the field. So Bond has a play. He can create plays for others without making the play himself, which is interesting.
You mentioned Bond and his speed and how he is probably the fastest of this group. I can say that that's how Texas players feel.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's actually the fastest, but Jaden Blue was asked last week, outside of himself, who would he say is the next fastest Longhorn? And he said Isaiah Bond. He said IB. That's Isaiah Bond.
And you know what? This is what we've been hyping up. This is why I'm hyping up Texas speed on their roster. That Bond is a 10-3 guy. Silas Bolden and Ryan Wingo are 10-5 guys. And Silas Bolden is maybe quicker than fast and still a 10-5 type of guy. That's where Texas is at. And the guys that we aren't mentioning as the playmakers, they're all 10-8 guys. I mean, Texas
Bolden, Moore, and Cook. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't preclude, and I want to be clear, as we kind of put these in two different categories, Moore, Golden, Cook, and Bolden, Bond, and Wingo. It's not that Golden isn't going to make a play on a kick return or 100% play in a pass game, or DeAndre Moore. We saw that in the spring game. He can get deep. Jonte Cook certainly can make big plays. I mean, it's just they're two different types of receivers right now within this scheme, and Sark has to find the mix and is being challenged to find the mix right now. The two most impressive receivers I heard from Saturday's practice were Silas Bolden and Ryan Wingo. Now, Ryan Wingo, the difference is Ryan Wingo did most of his work against the twos with Arch Manning.
And crushed it in 2-minute drill with Arch.
Yeah. As opposed to the first team where Silas Bolden rotated in a lot more.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for this group? I think Bolden is moving into that circle of trust on a more cohesive front. If that not comprehensive is a better word. Yeah. Cohesive, bad word there. Comprehensive idea of being able to play multiple positions, but they've got to get him in his route recognition even better, is my understanding, so that he can also be dependable as well as a big play. The same has to happen for Isaiah Bond as well. So that's how we see it. It is no clearer than that to me, that you have two different sets right now, and you want the big play guys to become more dependable and go from there.
Yeah. And Sark wants to be able to mix and match those guys, because the key is, here's the key with the route recognition is when they roll three wideouts out there, at all times, Quinn has to have somebody that he is 100% dependable. So if he's under duress, he 100% knows that guy is where he's supposed to be. And that's what Sark is, I think, looking for right now, is how do I put these guys together in the rotation?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right. The second piece of the receiver core is the tight ends. And based on what you and I have heard, and this is coming out of Saturday's scrimmage, it was the first time that Amari Niblack asserted himself as definitively a major issue for defenses and a major target of Steve Sarkisian's offense with Quinn Ewers. Okay, we heard that. We also believe, based on what we've heard behind the scenes and seen a little bit in front of the curtain, Juan Davis has cemented his role on this team. He is a do-it-all H-back, more so than a tight end, not going to necessarily play in line, but will blow people up on an inside trap, that kind of, be a good receiver, quality receiver. And then you have Gunnar Helm, who's do everything.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of a mix of it all. Behind them, you have you have Spencer Shannon, and Jordan Washington. Shannon's more the inline guy. Washington, a kind of do-it-all guy that's flashed a lot as a true freshman. He even had a 30-yard plus catch on Saturday. Niblack, Helm, and Davis. I give your thoughts, because you talked to me a little bit before we taped this, and I agree with you on what the situation is with Amari Niblack that is different than JT Sanders.
Yeah, Niblack is a mismatched toy that Sark hasn't had in his time at Texas. And that doesn't mean he's going to be a more productive player than JT Sanders, but Niblack may not even be used as much as a traditional tight end as JT Sanders was. Amari Niblack lined up at an X, essentially, at times Saturday. This is a guy that Sark feels like, because he has wide receiver athleticism in a 6'3", 240-pound frame, you can do a lot with this guy as long as route recognition, everything comes into play with him as well in this offensive scheme. As long as him and Sark are on the same page and him and Quinn are on the same page, he is a different type of toy than Sark's had at his time at Texas, because you can move him all over the field. And it's not to say you couldn't line JT Sanders up out on the outside. Sark did a little bit, but he didn't do it in the same way he is with Niblack. You could see Niblack running freaking go routes. You could see him coming back running underneath screen type of play. You can see him doing a lot of things at that position without being a traditional tight end and hunting mismatches. There's two players on this Texas team that I think Sark will hunt mismatches with in the passing game: Amari Niblack and Jaden Blue.
That's interesting, because we're not even talking about running backs. You add Blue in there, and I agree with you. I mean, the big thing with the loss of Cedric Baxter is you could give him a two-back look, right? With Baxter and Blue, and then line up Blue in the slot, and all of a sudden you have a linebacker that's there for the run, stopping the two-back run. Yeah, good luck. No doubt about that. But with Niblack, I was told that he was probably targeted the third most of any player in the scrimmage on Saturday, behind Silas Bolden and Ryan Wingo. So the other thing that I would add for everybody, and when I say asserted, it's not just hunting mismatches. I think he's going to be a every game piece of the puzzle. And I know JT Sanders was similar last year. I was a little concerned that, hey, maybe sometimes Gunnar Helm may or may not be part of that puzzle for Texas. I think Niblack is such a player that Sark sees that and says, hey, we got to do that. As it relates to Shannon and Washington, it'll be interesting to see who makes the travel squad.
Yeah,
for those two. You don't usually bring more than 4 tight ends, especially when Malik Agbo is going to be your jumbo guy.
And the emergence of Juan Davis has changed that calculus a little bit right now. And it will be interesting to see what happens there. I think, look, Jeff Banks did call Jordan Washington a rising star.
Yeah, well, he is. I mean, he's a guy that can do both. He can threaten you downfield and block in line. That being said, I'm not so sure that Spencer Shannon isn't the best blocking tight end on the team right now.
Right.
And that means better than Niblack, Helm, and Davis as well. In line. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe they take 5 along with Agbo for goal line, short yardage type situation. If one of those guys can perhaps get involved on special teams. It would help them a lot as well. I look at it, and the receiver groups are pretty clear to me. You have the guys that are dependable, and then the big play guys.
Yeah.
And you want some of those big play guys to become more dependable.
Yeah.
And you want guys like Jonte Cook to actually be more reliable catching the ball.
Yes.
You want DeAndre Moore to be reliable catching the ball. You want Matthew Golden a little bit more skill, more playmaking out of him as well. So there's a mix and match there that Sark's trying to push and pull with to try to figure out what the chemistry is. At tight end, I think it's much, much clearer at tight end now after Saturday's scrimmage. Niblack is your JT Sanders. He's a little bit different because he's more of an outside receiver, to your point, but he is going to be that guy that gets a good number of targets this year.
Yeah. And one of the things I looked at the wide receiver position entering fall camp was Moore and Cook should be ahead of the other guys. If they don't continue to be ahead of the other guys after the second scrimmage or headed into game one, that's not great for their outlook for the season necessarily. Not they're not going to play and be good players, but the other guys are coming from behind in the scheme. And if you start to get caught a little bit in fall camp, then those other guys aren't close to maximizing yet within the scheme. They haven't even played a game in it. So Moore and Cook should have been well ahead starting the season in terms of route recognition, trust with Quinn, trust with Sark. If either one of those guys starts to get past a little bit, then they're fighting a little bit more of an uphill battle, because that means that one of the playmakers is catching you in the route recognition part of the game.
Yeah. It's like, and then does the circle of trust shrink?
Yeah.
Does it go from 6 to 5 to 4? We'll see. And it could be these big play guys also don't learn enough of the playbook, or get into the dependable category as quickly, and they get left behind.
That's right.
Early in the season.
Early in the season at Michigan.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it. That's our conversation about receivers. I thought it was time to kind of take a deeper look at those guys, because we do think that there's some separation now at wide receiver based on what we know. And we also think that those three guys at tight end have really they've kind of figured out how that's going to work. There's been some clarity there. All right, Jerry, that'll do it. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been On Texas Football. Hook 'em.